Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Buff Naggle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Buff Naggle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and we got a fantastic show today, where I'm really not really sure what we're going to do, but it's going to be fun. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. There's going to be growth involved. There's going to be fun times involved, and even funner stories. But I can't do this alone, so as always, I'm joined by Rafe. Rafe, how you doing?
Hey, Zach, this is going to be a phenomenal show, and we will reveal why in just a matter of moments. This show will be full of growth and enrichment. It will free your mind. You might learn something. You might develop a new way to get benefits. But before we get there, I got to say thanks to our listeners, because without you guys, we ain't nothing, as they say. We are a global top 10% podcast, and we thank you for that honor. We are at buffnaggle.com. You can get us Twitter, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Stitcher. Zach, there are places like, I'll bet one day if you dig around in the desert, like where they have all these tablets and stuff, you can carve, like a transcript of us might be found there, like under a pyramid. You never really know. If you're new to our podcast, hey, welcome. Thanks for coming. We are glad you're here. Give us 4 episodes. We will give you a reason to come back. And remember, tell a friend to listen and you will get a free episode. And remember, subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. For every 5-star review we get, Zach, I get pudding. So that's a very good thing. So
Yeah, so we keep getting those reviews and you keep eating, so that's everyone wins on that one. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, we're gonna have a lot of fun, even if I'm really not sure what we're doing. And to have a lot of fun, that means we have to bring on American's favorite rocket scientist. But we're not talking about rocket science today. Instead, Bob is going to join us as we have a discussion of the hobbies, the enrichment they give our lives, and how a small hobby can have a positive impact on the rest of your day, week, month, and even year. Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Zach. As always, it's good to be back here at Buff Naggle the podcast. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation because this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I have pursued hobbies all my life, as long as I can remember, going back to as a kid. And they really have had a positive benefit on my life. I mean, for example, a hobby is what brought us together. In fact, if you think about it, we've known each other. Zach and I met 14 years ago at a Lego event. And from there, our families have met and become friends. And, look at where that has led. I've gone from meeting Zach and playing Legos with him to appearing on a top 100 international podcast as a regular guest.
Yeah, look at how think about that day when you thought to yourself, should I go to this Lego event or not? And then you thought, someday I might be on a podcast, so I should probably go. So I'm sure
we met. I don't think podcasts were a thing at the time.
I can't remember. I've slept since then.
There were podcasts back in the 2000s.
I am certain that I wasn't thinking that at the time.
I was just trying to figure out how to get there and back without my models falling apart and having my kids
break them.
Break them or help me crash the car on the way.
Well, and the other thing was that there was never any doubt that I wanted to go to that event as soon as I saw it, and the only question was whether my son Brad at the time was willing to ride in the car the 6 hours or 5 hours that it was going to take us to get to Chicago.
Slackers. How far was our drive?
5 hours.
I had no problem, but it turned out he said, "Yeah, let's go." So we did, and look where it led.
Yes. Yeah, now you're here hanging out with me again.
14 years later, you're going to say, oh my goodness, where was I?
What was I thinking?
All right. So we're talking about hobbies. All right. And hobbies mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And I suppose there's some grand definition. I thought about looking it up and kind of asking Wikipedia what the internet thought of what the internet thought of hobbies, but I decided, no, I'm not going to do that. We're just going to go with what we
That
feel that it
seems
is.
like cheating anyway.
Yeah, it's like,
That's not very on brand.
if what
No.
to cheat or to not cheat.
No, it feels
Making it
very
up on
on
your
brand
own.
to make up our own definition. Like,
Yeah,
that's
that
pretty
sounds
much what
right.
we do on a weekly
It-
basis.
That is
I
what we
mean,
do.
that started with cheesecake, right? Something I remember something about
Oh, is
cheesecake.
cheesecake a cake or a pie? But that's a
Yes.
debate we've already had before.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we ended up on that, so I'll have to go back and listen to that
Oh
episode.
boy.
All right. Well, okay. So you've done a lot of hobbies, and so
I do a lot of hobbies.
but it was one of my hobbies that led me to the Lego hobby that led us to the podcast, right? So a long time ago, when I was a little kid, we had model trains. Bob, do you have model trains?
Yes, as a kid, we had model trains. Actually, my brother got a train set. I think maybe for Christmas. Santa Fe, because Santa is who brings the trains, right? So, and we had a 4x8 sheet of plywood in the basement, and we had the train set up on that. So yeah, we did that. Not really that involved, but we did have fun with it.
Well, we had a big thing. I mean, we had like the whole length of the basement.
Nice.
On one wall, the trains down one side, circle around the other, go to the other, circle around back. And we had the whole mess with, the green grass. And we had like a little airport, and we had all sorts of stuff going on.
Oh, wow.
But we had, when we moved, that kind of fell apart. And then when I had kids, I had a little N gauge model railroad in the basement. And it was really hard to keep the kids off it, and things fall to the ground and they break and it's bad and things like that. So one day I took Zach and Harry to a model railroad show in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
And
I think I remember this.
Do you remember this?
I might.
So we were there, and you know how model train shows are. It's a bunch of guys sitting around wearing those railroad hats. And
yes, I do.
And I know you're a current model railroader, Bob, but I got to tell you, the model railroad guys are not known for their joviality. They're not jovial.
There are different subsets. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
So we're going there, and I see all these guys, and model railroading in its purest form is kind of grimy, right? It's trains, right? So it's soot, and it's
and trains aren't pretty.
They're not
bottom
pretty.
line.
They're dirty. Yeah. Certainly on the outside. On the inside, they can be wonderful. But we're seeing the trains, and I'm pretty excited because I did this as a kid, and I'm seeing all this new stuff. But there was this whole crowd around one of the layouts, and it was a lot of kids and adults. And I go over there, and it's Lego trains, and there are these guys, and these guys are happy, and they're goofing around, and they're like racing the trains around the track.
Yes.
And one of them goes flying off the track, okay? And it falls to the floor, and it smashes into pieces. And everybody stops and looks like they're all scared. And then everybody starts laughing because the owner guys were like, whoa, we'll just put it back together. And they just put it back together. And I think the model railroad guys hated having the Lego guys there. But I thought, hey, here's something that I like, which is the train stuff, and something my kids like, which is the Lego thing. This seems like a perfect marriage. And 15, 20 years from now, here we are. So one of them leads to the other. That's how we got into the whole Lego thing.
That's an interesting story. I know I did in early on when I was in the model railroading. I went to a convention, a national convention for model railroading, and at the train show there, they had a Lego train set up, and that was, I think, the first time I had seen all that, and that was actually a couple of years before we met at the Lego event, and yeah, it's really amazing what they can do, and it's a very different. They're very different. The Lego is more whimsy, more fun, than the model train stuff. The model train stuff can be more serious. But yeah, that's really interesting. That's how you got involved in Lego.
Yeah, we dragged Zach and Harry along through all that with us.
Fantastic.
Zach, do you remember that?
I do. Huh? I don't think I was the best at building trains or Lego trains, but I was very good at the reassembling component.
Yes, that's part of there's a couple levels to that though, right, Bob? So if you take Lego for an example, right? Like when you start off, you get these pieces in a kit and you put it together, and that's kind of fun, and you keep doing it. But after a while, you start doing it better or more seriously. It's hard to talk about toys more seriously, but you change how you do that, and it seems to me like any serious hobby on this leads to something more than buying a set and putting it on the shelf from the Lego point of view, and going to be good or develop a skill or an expertise in something that, unless you're going to be a some sort of architectural designer guy like our friend Rocco, that there's really it's just for your own internal growth and enrichment.
Yeah. Well, building a set is where you start with Lego, right? It's I buy a set. We got. I can remember when Brad was young. My son Brad was young. We got. We both got the Snowspeeder set because Star Wars was our thing, and we both built that, and that led to a whole bunch more Star Wars Lego sets. But eventually, when we found out about the Lego convention, that is when my eyes were truly opened, because up until that point, the hobby was just building sets, right? You bought a set, you build it, there you go, you have it, and you might play around a little bit with, or you might take it apart and do something else, but mostly you built the sets. But then seeing what other people were doing with Lego, and that it was actually a hobby and a creative medium all to itself, was just eye-opening. And so we started building something completely, we saw something that caught our eye that was collaborative. And we built some things and took them to the event to hook up with others. And it was Moonbase at the time was a thing. And there was a standard for, if you built a module, and this is a theme, we're going to talk about this. So let's keep that thought in mind. There's a standard, you build the module to the standard, you can bring it to the event, hook it up with other people's modules who have also followed the standard, and then you can have this big setup. And that's actually where I met Zach. Because
so Zach, you built one of those, right, Zach?
I did. I built a moon base way back in before
2007.
BC before COVID. So it's a collaborative event, and it gets everybody together to follow this standard. But like, you just got back from a train thing, Bob.
Yes, I did.
You did that there?
Did it exactly the same thing.
Yeah, so the creative thing is, Bob, you mentioned it with the moon base, you mentioned it with model trains, of you build a thing that fits into the model, but if you can do whatever fun thing you want inside the model, then you get to show your creative juices. You get to show your kind of expression of how you see life and you see your hobby into this other thing. So you could take a moon base, and if you were someone who loves Disney World, you could make a moon base module that like replicated Disney World, or replicated hamsters running around in a hamster wheel or something like that. If you wanted to do that, you could do that, as long as it could connect and hook up and, connect and overall benefit the model as a whole.
So you could do a moon base where each individual moon base was one of the 7 wonders of the world, for example.
I think that's exactly what we should do.
I think that's coming up.
That would be, yes, on brand. So and of course, I being an engineer, I tend to the less whimsical, and so my Moonbase modules were kind of on the serious side. They were trying to be, and also my interest in space, which is what hooked me.
You have an interest in space,
as it turns out. As America's,
are you into?
I'm not going. I am unlikely to go to space.
Not with that attitude.
And that's a fair point. You win that one. You win that round.
I got to tell you, we found we're packing up because we're moving some piece of the
Buffnagel Empire.
The Buffnagel Empire is having a little bit of what she used to call location change coming up, and we found some stuff. I found something that Olivia made a zillion years ago, a little thing of like, here's what's in your life. Your life is based upon all these things, and these are the things that you want to do, and then these are your dreams. And one of her dreams was, I want to be an astronaut and set foot on Mars.
Wow.
And the teacher wrote -10. It's the Mars. No, she didn't. She wrote no, but she wanted to be an astronaut, Bob, way back in the day when
No
she was just a little
way.
kid.
Oh, I
Yeah.
can't wait to talk to her about that. That's great.
All right, so
Um,
let me go back to these things. I want to talk about the hobbies a little bit because I don't want
yeah,
we could spend 6 episodes just talking about Lego hobby, about trains and stuff.
sure.
But what I want to do, I want to make sure we're covering the bases with other folks because otherwise we just become a Lego show, which is all right. But
Yeah.
there are other reasons, right? The hobbies that you do are good if they do what you said, Bob. They give you growth and they give you enrichment and they provide some benefit to you outside of your normal average everyday thing. And it's probably not benefit in a monetary fashion, right? You're not doing this thing as a job. It's just to give you that internal human enrichment.
Yes. And it's to me, it's all about a feeling. I know I have I as I said at the beginning, I've always had hobbies. I can't even imagine life without that. It's a thing I do because of what it does for me, what it gives me, and I think we should touch on some of those things. We started talking about a collaborative setup at a Lego convention. We can do a similar thing with model trains, but the idea there is that you can pursue your hobby in a solitary way, and that provides benefits. Okay. If I'm building a Lego set, I know that my mind is at peace, right? I'm so focused on what I'm doing. The rest of the world just drifts away. It frees my mind. And, and that's a benefit, right? Um, while I'm building a Lego set, I might be learning techniques from the designer that made the Lego set in the first place, and in learning those techniques, that might make me a better model builder. But then there's another step to it. With most hobbies, you'll find that you can pursue it in a solitary way, but then also there's almost always, again, before COVID, there's almost always some get-togethers going on, and it doesn't matter, whether it's Lego, whether it's model trains, astronomy, whatever. There are events where people get together of like mind and like interests. And the benefits of that are, as we talked about, you could meet people that become lifelong friends that end up inviting you to their podcast.
That is what I found was really interesting when I started. Whenever I go to one of those things where the other people in the group are also doing stuff, I it is always one of the most it's one of the most rewarding things I do, and it's also one of the most humbling things that I do. If you ever need a little shot of humility, go find somebody else that does your hobby, and you'll find out you're getting your ass kicked. I mean, it has been amazing to me to see that whether I'm doing Lego stuff or whether I'm doing slot cars or building model rockets or doing things with wood, I always find somebody who can blow me away.
Yeah, but just because you find someone that blows you away does not mean what you're doing doesn't create value. And I think that's so important to note. Like, I can go build a moon base. Is the moon base going to be as good as Bob's moon base? No, because one, I've never been to space.
And you're not America's rocket scientist.
Or know anything about rocket science. But two, like, I don't need to be as good as Bob. I'm doing it because it provides me joy. And this idea, and I see this a lot in, we see this in academics, we see this in athletics, and we do see this in hobbies of, well, I'm not as good as that person. And you know what? The people who are doing the hobby and who are better than you are really happy that you showed up because you get to show off a piece of yourself to the world in an expressive manner that is not just, the default, I work at X corporation or I do Y. It's you taking a piece of yourself, something you enjoy, using it and showing it to the world as a whole, like, hey, this is a part of me and I like doing this because it makes me feel whole.
Yeah, there's a real risk to that, right? I mean, I do remember that the first time I brought something to a show, and you wonder, are you good enough to be part of the group here? And it's interesting. My brother does when he was in medical school, he moonlighted as a children's party entertainer. So he would make balloon animals and juggle. And he said it's really interesting when you juggle in front of people that don't know how to juggle. They always want you to do more, right? So if you're juggling 3 tennis balls, they'll tell you to do 4, and if you're doing 4, they'll tell you to do 5, and if you're doing 5, they'll tell you to juggle swords, and if you're juggling swords, they'll tell you to do torches, and if you're juggling torches, they'll tell you to light yourself on fire. I mean, so they always want to one up the issue, right? But if you learn to juggle and you can only juggle 3 tennis balls, and you talk to a juggler who is proficient in juggling, and you can say, hey, I can do 3, that person will say, wow, that's awesome. That's incredible. That's great. I know how hard it is to get to where you are, and I appreciate what you've done.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you're talking about, because I had kind of a similar feeling at this event I went to this summer. I was a model railroader very heavily involved in the early 2000s, from the time I got started in it, as a quote serious hobby, but then kind of dropped out of it for a while for most of the past 10 years, and coming back to it this year, it was an interesting experience. What got me going was that there was going to be this event, and it was modules and scale modules. And the event was going to bring together people that were doing things that I was really interested in doing and wanted to do as well.
So you're talking about like scenery things or engineering things or electronics?
The modules, the way this module standard works, it allows you to build prototype scenes. So real scenes that match some real place in the world and on the railroad. And that really appealed to me, and also appealed to one of my other friends in the hobby that I've known for a long time, and actually him and his dad. And what that got me going. And so for 3 months, basically threw together and prepared some modules that I had built for a different project 12 years ago that never really got finished, and brought them out, rehabilitated them so that they met this new standard that we were going to be connecting to. And then with like 2.5 weeks left to go, I had the modules built, I had track laid, I had the electrical part hooked up, but I hadn't done any scenery. and yes. And so there I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is the part that people are going to see, right? I don't know if I can do this. I've never done this much scenery, and I certainly haven't done it in this short a time. You know,
and you didn't do it in a way that you had to put it in your car and drive to Wyoming, right?
Yes, all the way clear across the country, 2 days worth of driving, 12 hours a day. Yes, I hadn't done that, and so it was interesting because there was a little bit of panic. No, there was a lot of panic. Okay, and there was this. I'm going to sleep on it tonight, and I'll go. I'll work on this tomorrow, right? And then it was like, no, you can't. You don't have time. You don't have time to not start tonight. So, but behind there, all of that was what you were saying. It was that fear that you weren't going to measure up somehow, and that you were making a first impression here, because this was a new group of people we had never met before, and we were going in as the new guys, but then what was so interesting, it was a Saturday night, and I just started. I said, you know what, do 6 inches, see how it goes, right? Just, you know how to do this. You spread some glue down, you shake the bottles, you get green stuff out, just do a little bit, see what happens. You can always scrape it off and start over again if it doesn't come out. And I was like, well, that wasn't so bad. And then,
so how long did you go working that night?
I did. I worked past midnight that night. Then I did a little more. And then before I knew it, this was a 6-foot long straight module. Before I knew it, I had one entire side done. and it looked good. I was like, wow, this looked good. And we had made some trees. My brother had come visit, and we made trees. I think the day before, and so I had these trees, and I was like, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna go get a couple of trees and put it on and see what that looks like. And then that was another half hour, 45 minutes of planting trees because it looked really good. But the point was, you know, you're gonna do, and then we went, and my modules looked good, and they stood up, to what other people had done. But the point there is that you people are going to be happy you came,
Right.
and that feeling of being with like-minded people who are pursuing the hobby in the same way that you are and have similar interests, the benefit of that is just indescribable. It really is. It feels really good.
Yeah, so that is a thing with there's a risk there, Bob. You risk,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
You risk your reputation. You risk people like, I don't know if I want to go. I was like, but I've always found in that situation, if you make a real effort, okay, you could have said, well, I don't care. I'm just not going to do any scenery. And at that point, they would have been like, yeah, you're not really serious about it. But you put in the effort, you did the work, and I'm sure people talked about that. You were like, well, how'd you do your grass? How'd you do your trees? Oh, really? I didn't know. You
That
use
is
broccoli
exactly
for
what
trees?
happened.
That
Yes.
would be that's how those things come out. So there's always a benefit in doing that. And I think, to me, there's two pieces. There's this human interaction element, and then I always come back to this. I, I think we got to create, and I think we talked a couple weeks ago, Zach. We talked about produce more, consume less, right? And part of that was in this. You need to start. You got to start giving to the whole, right? If you're sitting there spending all your time just reading other people's content on your phone, perusing other people's web pages, and you're not giving anything back to the to improve the human condition, then you're not pulling your share of the weight. And I think the creation piece is necessarily human, and I think we are called to be creative. And a lot of these hobbies provide creativity. Look at, we're building stuff out of Lego blocks. We're making stuff out of trains. My wife makes things that makes rugs and quilts. I make stuff out of wood and okay, launching rockets and shooting them into the sky. Yeah, that counts too, right? Because you're making a rocket, making it go. And there are all these things that you can learn, right? You learn other things too. Look, I don't remember how much I learned about physics, flight mechanics and stuff like that, launching model rockets when I was a kid before I knew anything about, quadratic equations or any of that. We knew these things were parabolas, and we would study all that stuff. And we learned a lot of new things because of the hobbies we were involved in.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just, to me, the thing is the feeling that you get doing this, and the positive effects that come from pursuing a hobby. And I just think that creating gives you a joy that, as I said, it's hard to describe. I I guess I'm really hooked on making things, right? Because that is, when you start with nothing and you sit there, and even if you're building a set, you're following instructions, you still built something that wasn't there before. And the feeling you get is it's powerful. And even more so if you start with just the raw materials, and you say, and you, in your mind, you imagine something, and then you make it real, you make it happen. And from there, yes, when you participate with a community that does some particular hobby, then you can contribute to the conversation, you can contribute to improving the practice there, because you have some unique view of the world that other people don't have, and you can bring that to the hobby.
Yeah, Bob. It's good that you mentioned that like little thing you could do. I love art, as I'm pretty sure has been apparent throughout this whole podcast. And in September, every day I spent 5 to 20 minutes and I drew a little artistic thing. Was it any good? Well, that's up to whoever looks at my art. But is me creating something. Um,
Dude. No,
um,
you guys. Okay, wait. I gotta say, Zach, that's wonderful.
That is nice. Wow.
Zach drew a very beautiful flower. No, now we're gonna play. We're gonna play psychiatrist and tell you what Zach was thinking because of the flower had thorns.
I'm not going to do that.
it was a rose. I drew a purple
I'm
rose.
teasing.
That's
No, it's
beyond the
great.
point.
It was
But
really
I
nice.
sat
It's beautiful.
down and I made the time to create something, to express something, and I did it not to please somebody, not to make money. Not I did it because it brought me joy. And like at the end of the day, doing these hobbies and things and participating in these community groups or doing something individually will bring joy. And I'm pretty sure I might sound like a broken record at this point, but the pursuit of joy is something that, we talk a lot about on this podcast. And it's something that, maybe as society we've lost. But finding those things that give us that joy, give us that extra piece is so nice to have, because then you can come to a community where people appreciate that more, where you can come to a group and you can show that off to the world and you can feel comfortable in doing that and saying, hey, yeah, I did that. Yeah, is it perfect? No. But did I do it and did I show up? Yes. And I can be proud of that fact. And I think that's something that we need to come back to. Bob, you've never done scenery, but you did it and it looked good and you were proud of that and you had fun in that moment. My dad, you built Lego things that make absolutely no sense to me because there's a lot of math that I don't know involved, but like it looks cool and it's fun and I can get enjoyment from that. And that's you giving that to somebody else. Or when you go to a different convention, when you're interacting with these people, there is that joy that you get to express about yourself to others. And that joy is contagious and can brighten rooms and make people's lives infinitely better.
Zach, I can't agree more. There's this tremendous value in taking a risk to put yourself out there, and what you always find is that there's a way you fit with that group that you're with, and everybody knows that you can take a bunch of musicians and have play all individually, but when you put them together, you get an orchestra. And there's an example, right? Music's a hobby. People do that. And a lot of, some people do it for money. Some people do it for fun. And I love to see those. I think they call them, they do these surprise orchestral things where they'll have somebody just show up somewhere with a fiddle, start playing, some little Mozart thing, and somebody comes out of the woods with a flute, and somebody shows up with a tambourine, or what. Next thing you know, they're doing some massive, they're doing the requiem, or and everybody loves that kind of thing. They love it when these people come together to produce a total that's greater than the sum of the parts. And I think these hobbies allow you to do that. But it takes a little risk on your part. You got to learn a little skill. You got to put yourself out there, and you got to, the way you're really going to improve is to go put yourself around people who are the experts, and get a little humbled. And it's a remarkable feeling. That's a remarkable feeling, to get humbled. Some of the greatest feelings is when the guys who are really good say, wow, that's really nice. And then you're like, wow, I've become one of them.
Yes.
And no matter what it is, and you know what, you only get there if you put the effort in, and if you're willing to do the work.
Yep. And yeah, putting yourself out there is right. I know when I started in the model railroad hobby 20 years ago, and I initially went to train shows, just like you talked about. And yeah, you see the trains, and that's the cool thing. You see different setups where people have the trains set up, and that's a reason to go to that. But then I saw online, in my reading online, I saw a convention. Unfortunately, it was 3 days or a week after the convention happened, but it was an annual convention. So I thought, well, next year I'm going to that convention, right? It was nearby, and I did. And that is actually where I met the friends that went to Wyoming. And, similar to what happened with Zach, I mean, I didn't end up on a podcast with them, but I did end up.
Not yet. You didn't, Bob. Not yet.
Maybe they could be on our podcast next.
But then, packed up a bunch of modules and took them all the way to Wyoming because of that. But yes, it's exactly what you say. So I went to that convention, and that's when I found out. I talked to the head of the local model train division here where I live and found out when the next local meeting was and went to that meeting. And they do show and tell. So just like in school, right? It's show and tell. And they bring their models or bring whatever they're working on and show it and describe it. And I can still remember the one guy who scratch building. He did narrow gauge O scale, and everything he built was scratch built. The cars, the locomotives, everything. And he was showing this scratch built gondola wood gondola car that he had built. With it had literally every little detail, and my eyes were just opened so wide at that moment that I had no idea that people were pursuing the hobby in that way. And
it's really we're talking a lot about guy hobbies because we're guys, right? But there are a lot of women do a lot of hobby stuff, and they produce incredible stuff as well. I mean, you
yes.
look at the quilters that Bob, or the women that make any kind of clothes, the bakers, right? And any of these things can be done, male or female, doesn't really matter. Like the Lego community has a rich female presence now, and I'm sure there are women getting into the model railroading stuff, and they all bring꯫ Everybody brings a different perspective, and
Yes.
I think this is one of those things we talk about a lot, Zach, about each individual's uniqueness and their own I'll say their own manifestation of Imago Dei. All right, they are image and likeness of God, but they represent a certain reflection, a certain component of that. And when you get all these people together, it is amazing how broad and diverse the glorious goodness of all of us together can be. And you get to experience that in these hobbies. And is it silly? Yeah, it's silly. We're making things out of plastic bricks. You guys are building little fake trains. Zach's drawn roses in a book. But these are valuable because they help us see the real depth and the breadth of the human experience. I think it's one of the great things.
They let us be more than just people working a job. They let us be more than people I worked out today. I'm like, okay, cool. Like that's great. I'm good for you. But did you do something to benefit yourself so that the rest of your day, the rest of your week, the rest of your month, the rest of your year can feel fulfilled? But you don't do the thing for 1 hour a day because that's the thing you love. You do the thing for 1 hour a day to benefit the other 23 hours in your day.
And you do it for you and you do it for others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what's so unique and special and interesting about hobbies is all these people are doing that in their own unique way. And you create these communities that enlighten and rise people up.
Yeah. I keep thinking about how we, every now and then you'll be typically on Saturdays, you drive somewhere and you're like, oh my goodness, look, there's a classic car show. Or you drive somewhere and you see a bunch of guys out in a field flying remote control airplanes, or you see somebody doing something like, wait a minute, you fly radio controlled hot air balloons? I mean, these people do also, there are if you ever go to you should go to an air show just to see the wackiness of air show people. There are these guys that have little jet aircraft that are 4 or 5 feet long, and they have little miniature jet engines that they use to fly these things around, or radio controlled ships and boats, and just the things people can do on their own with go to a quilt show, go to a cooking convention, go to a Lego show, go see these things that other people do that are great, and instead of walking away from there going, I can't do any of that, go, that was awesome. And I'll bet one time they were just like me. And go home and find something that turns you on and, go get good at it and go share that with others.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that at all. So, Bob, before we let you go, and before we let you go be America's favorite rocket scientist, I'm going to ask you a question we have not asked you on the show before, to my knowledge.
This question.
What advice, what skills, what little lesson can you give to our listeners to help them pursue the good in their own life related to hobbies?
Well, related to hobbies is an interesting one. What I can say is that I agree with Rafe. Go pursue a hobby. You can do it. You can do it individually. You can do it, but you get even more benefit if you do it and with others in a social sense. And I think the benefit there is, I hope, I mean, this conversation has just been far more than I even imagined when I suggested the topic, and it's absolutely wonderful, and I'm glad I was able to be a part of it. Um, the uh, the other thing I want to say in answer to your question is, and this isn't necessarily directly related to hobbies, but you never know when you're going to be the best part of somebody's day, and what that means is always be amazing to people.
Well, see, now I'm all teary eyed, right? Because I wasn't seeing that coming. That's I just, if Bob were right here, I'd give him a big hug, because it is go. What does Bill and Ted say? Go be excellent to each other. And Zach says things like that a lot, but you know what? It's true. Do good, do good for others, and that'll do good for you. We are rewarded by serving. Give of yourself, learn something good, produce more, consume less. That's all I got to say.
I can't argue with any of the things you said. As always, I'm going to say positively impact somebody's lives. Bob, I believe you did that today. Rafe, we're trying to do that since we've started this thing, so we will continue to do that until they kick us off the airways. So again, thank you all for listening. I want to remind you to go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.